This video is brought to you by Squarespace.
I fear Pinterest has led me down yet another crafting rabbit hole. Miniatures. Trash DIY, spooky dollhouse customization. These are the things that grasp at my crafting heartstrings this particular October evening. But it's not just this October evening, because I have had my peepers on this spooky DIY since literally October of last year. It's unfortunately one of the spooky crafting concepts I did not have the pleasure of getting to last year, but in a year's time, it has still not left my brain as something that I just have to do. Of course, the main method that I see people using for this DIY is to take an existing dollhouse, paint it, build on top of it, zhuzh it up, add whatever miniatures they want to add to this. However, I've been looking for a dollhouse since like July or August. I have not found one at thrift stores, antique malls, eBay, Facebook Marketplace. Not one that would suit the needs that I have. Most of them are just way too expensive, way too big, or they are super intricate dollhouse kits that I simply don't have time to assemble in this video. But at the end of the day, I also just have a giant box of craft foam in my basement and a lot of trash that I've acquired throughout the years. Things that I honestly very easily could just make a little haunted dollhouse out of. So I've decided ultimately the DIY route is the route that I would like to go in this video. Or the trash method is really what I mean to say.
I'm the trash man.
So let's go analyze my hordes of garbage and see if there's any prime cuts that I can utilize to make a weird haunted dollhouse thing. Hello. So regular viewers of the channel should recognize this bin, also known as my shame. It is a giant bin of craft foam and other like scrap materials that I have been slowly adding to over the course of probably 12 years. You know, when I have scrap materials, I don't throw them out, I hoard them in order to later use them for projects. Basically get free materials out of it. So in addition to that, I've also got kind of your more standard materials on hand, thankfully. Popsicle sticks, the obligatory tubing, just assorted like plastic junk. And finally, the best pull that I've got from my garbage collection for this video. Forgot I even had these around. I have a whole bunch of like messed up and relatively failed prints from the Halloween costume that I made last year. Just like, you know, just stuff that like sort of failed would still look, you know, absolutely gorgeous for a little miniature. Check out that little window. That's gonna look so cute. I very politely asked Pascura to do a little illustration for us, just a little rough sketch of what I want my witch cottage to look like, just the general structure, the forms of it all. I have some semblance of a plan going into this. I definitely want to pull a little bit from like the Hocus Pocus house with this, maybe a little bit from like Hobbit hole architecture, maybe bring in some Addams Family mansion architecture in there as well, just to make it equal parts spooky and wholesome. That's kind of the whole package that I'm going for here. So I have a bunch of random materials here. I'm just gonna start kind of building up using the stuff, trying to get as close to my illustration as I can get and kind of see where I go with this. I've never really built any miniatures like this before, so I kind of don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just gonna try to have fun with it.
So honestly, it did take me a little while to get started here and figure out exactly what I was doing. The base wasn't necessarily hard because a lot of it was just rectangles, but I was mostly just being indecisive about my shape, and unfortunately I was also locked into a certain scale because I really wanted to use those giant Gothic windows in the top gable of the house. So for that, the gable had to be wide enough and a certain triangular shape, so the original scale I was trying to make the house was just too small, but luckily I did have a box on hand that was pretty much the right shape and size to do this, so I ended up using that and just cutting it down and building onto it. But first I decided to focus on the main roof because I was just so excited about those windows. I made the roof just out of 2 triangular pieces of cardboard. I used some old takeout chopsticks as the ridge and side members of the roof and cut the outer shell of the roof out of some craft foam. This was already looking pretty cool with my Gothic window, so I moved on to building out the base of the house to match the size of the roof. And I admit on this project I pretty much immediately started getting lost in some of the details. I started building out a little gable window to add to the roof out of one of these failed half Gothic window prints. I built this out of some craft foam for the gable side, which I cut a hole in for the window, and made the roof out of some craft foam and popsicle sticks. I then cut a slit in my roof and slotted it in at a very approximate angle. I even added a little flower box underneath the window. I even got a little ahead of myself and started adding little shingles to the roof out of some cut up popsicle sticks. This kind of detail is definitely one of the things that inspired me to do this project in the first place. place, but I was definitely getting ahead of myself, and the base of my house was looking entirely too basic. So I enticed myself to work on it by making a little front door out of some cardboard and popsicle sticks. I tried to make it in a similar style to my other Gothic windows by having a little arch at the top, but there's no way I was going to capture that same level of detail without the help of a little magic. So I took some of the leftover stained glass window film that I used on my Halloween costume last year and cut a little bit of that to fit the window on the front door, and then hand drew on some Tudor style glass window trim. To help further accentuate the detail of my front door, I used some hot glue and silicone molds. I have a bunch of these filigree molds that I use on literally every single project. It is such an easy way to add instant detail like this. I also added a little bit more detail over that gable window with this cicada mold, and after adding a couple more popsicle sticks to my door, it was time to install it in the front of the house alongside some very tall Gothic windows. I added another bit of filigree to the top of the door to look like wooden molding, as well as some wood paneling and trim on the front of the house. It was then time to add an obligatory oversized Tim Burton chimney, which was created from 4 strips of craft foam glued into a square cylinder. This got a couple of foam details on top and then was cut at a dramatic angle to match my roof pitch and attached with copious amounts of hot glue. To finish up night 1 of crafting, I added some fake wood molding to the front of the roof with those hot glue silicone molds. I puzzle pieced several of those together to get a really unique look, and this is how my little house was looking when my brain could no longer conceive of architecture.
Oh, hi there. Don't mind me. I'm just holding my emotional security pumpkin while I stress. So in light of this stress, let's take a break while I tell you about this video's sponsor, Squarespace. You know what doesn't stress me out? Customization. And a website that is very easy to both build and use. That's right, folks. You can start out with a website template. Choose from dozens of professionally designed, flexible templates that are tailored to whatever niche you are in. Enjoy control over your fonts, colors, website graphics, and the pages that you create. I host many different galleries on Squarespace so that I can accommodate my different art niches and portfolios. And thankfully, Squarespace does not add more stress to my life. Instead, they have tools like automatic image scaling, which allow me to update my galleries regularly with the click of a button, and Squarespace will do all of the arranging and organizing for me. And I might be overwhelmed with the video schedule that I have thrust upon myself this season, but I won't get overwhelmed with Squarespace's e-commerce platform and other robust website tools. They have SEO tools to help you show up more often in search results to the people who are actually looking for your kind of work, an e-commerce platform with selling tools to accommodate digital sellers, physical goods, people who sell their services, even in-person selling tools for those that use a Square reader. I'm personally a big fan of their custom merch feature, which allows you to sell your goods through a print-on-demand service, which reduces product waste and allows you to sell hands and brains free because they handle inventory, production, and shipping for you. So if you want one less thing to stress out about whenever it comes to running your business or hosting your portfolio, head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, head to squarespace.com/pricklyalpaca to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you so much as always to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Now you guys should go see the other Kira while I continue to caress my emotional support pumpkin. So this is where I got by the end of the first night. I definitely like the direction that it's going in. I love all my little windows that I got going on. This side especially I think is going quite well just because it's way more done than anything else. So I definitely made it too big. What's wrong with me? Why do I always do this? I have just like absolutely no concept of scale whenever I'm making stuff like this. That's okay, but we probably don't need to make this any bigger than it already is. So I might downscale a couple of the other features that I'm gonna put in here, or like really try to make them smaller elements of this main house just to make it a little bit more compact. This tower is like quite big. I don't know if I'm gonna keep this at its current size or not. We'll see about that. Also, I want to add like a little moat, for lack of a better term, around the base of the cottage. Have like a little mill wheel off to the side. This perfect little old 3D printing spool that I have lying around. I need to make it look more like a mill wheel and everything. Add some wood pieces to it. Look at that, it's like pretty much the perfect size. I also want to add another one of those Tudor style gables to this side of the roof, and I'm trying to work smarter, not harder here, even though I'm gonna work a little harder. It's inevitable for me. I have some old boxes from some things. Think I'm gonna use them kind of like this. Just add a gable roof on top of this. And I even have like a really good window size for this side. So I'm just gonna keep trudging along and building out the bases of all this. I don't have a lot of time before I need to like kind of get into into refining this and get into sanding, painting, that sort of thing. So I'm gonna binge and just see what I can do before my time limit runs out.
So first I started working on the little building that I wanted to go out to the right side of my house. I started by adding in some windows, prepping them with the same stained glass film that I used on my front door before gluing them all in. Next I started working on the roof, which I gave a much more exaggerated gable than the main roof. The gable side of the roof got a half circle window with some filigree over it, and the gable on the roof got glued to the top of my boxes. I added another one of my medium-sized windows below the gable, and while I was at it I went back and added window film to all of the windows I had already added to the house before adding a bunch of Tudor-style wooden molding to the little building with popsicle sticks. I was really jumping around at this point, so I shifted my attention back to the house because we needed some kind of foundation for all this to sit on top of. So I set my main house on top of some old packaging to give it some structure and started building out a little front porch area. I did this with a foundation of cardboard and then glued popsicle sticks on top of it in a way that looked like paneled wood. I also added a couple of skinnier popsicle sticks to the front gable of my house to give it some Tudor style trim as well. And then with a couple of foundations down, I started attempting to glue the building to the side of the roof. To do this, I used a lot of glue and a chopstick anchored to the side of the roof to give it a little bit more structure. It was chaotic, but it worked. Next, I built a little stairway for my porch out of popsicle sticks, and that in combination with the roof made the house really look like it was coming together. It no longer looked like a pile of cardboard boxes. With the main structure done, it was time to let myself dive into indulgent details. I started by gluing one of my stained glass windows onto an old 3D printing filament spool, and I glued a bunch of popsicle sticks around the outside of the spool to make it look like a mill wheel. Since I wanted to have a mill and a water scene around the base of the house needed a base. So I took some plastic that I had lying around from a previous project, cut out a rough shape for my scene to sit on top of, and then glued my main house down to begin anchoring everything in place. This allowed me to begin building out the foundation of my house and the porch area, and I decided the porch area needed a little bay window style nook off to the right side, so I built a base out of an old foam clay container and popsicle sticks, added some Gothic windows placed in foam to the top, and glued on some popsicle sticks for more Tudor style detail. I also hid some of the messy seams with some long filigree mold pieces. Since I wanted this to look like a little tower, it needed a pointy roof, so I built a rough shape out of foam and cut out the sides so it fits around the main building. While I was on roofs, I decided to build out the top of the front porch. I decided to give it a pretty wacky design because I'm not going for realistic architecture here, and I really like how the chaotic shape came out. For the supports of the porch roof, I used some old failed 3D prints and kind of pieced them together. I ended up having the perfect amounts and sizes of these, so it was a really good way to use up old 3D print garbage. While I was building out this side tower, I needed something for it to attach to at the base, so I stacked a couple of boxes on top of each other, which ended up being pretty much the perfect height for my tower on top, and added some craft store windows to those boxes, which also got the Tudor style trim and the stained glass. And before I glued this box into place, I took some thrifted LEDs that I've been hoarding for some time, stuck them inside the box to illuminate the windows, making sure the switches of course can still be accessed through the outside, which gives this building some beautiful illumination whenever they're turned on. And that building was finally secured in place with some glue, and the ugly bits were covered up with craft foam. I was getting a little lost in the sauce here, so I made this little dormer window mostly off camera, but I did manage to film myself covering the roof in these little shingles that I got from the craft store. I was gonna just try to use the popsicle sticks that I had for the shingles, but I quickly realized the amount of real estate I had was going to make that a miserable experience. Anyways, I glued that little dormer window into place on the side of my roof, and to cover that gap between the main house and the little side building, I made this little modular roof that can come off, allowing me to put lighting inside stuff and have access to the inside a little bit easier. And I also put a little lantern in the top to make it fancy. With all of my roofs now built, I began the tedious process of covering all of them in those little tiny shingles, which took a very long time to individually place and cover all the surface area, but I gotta say it was really worth it for the aesthetic and the detail. You guys know I'm all about aesthetic and detail. Speaking of which, I added another window to the back of the roof while covering it in shingles. And speaking of the back of things, the back of my building was looking real rough. Just extremely vacant and unloved, along with a bunch of stone details using scrap foam that I had lying around. I added a bunch of Tudor trim to the faces of the buildings, which made them look much more loved and intentional. Circling back around to the front of the building, I had still not meticulously detailed the front porch, so the roof of the front porch got a bunch of shingles. I thankfully had just enough to do this, and I had thankfully picked up these at the craft store to add a little bit more detail to the porch railing and the stairs. I built the porch railing and the stair railing out of these, a popsicle stick stick and some hot glue, and I think that tiny bit of extra detail really added a lot of charm. To finish things on the porch up, I glued this sick Death's Head hawk moth piece to the front of the porch roof. I have a silicone mold for this that I purchased for a future project, and it really came in handy here. Finally, I glued a secondary porch roof to the actual roof to hide some of my seams and make things just look a little bit more complex. And finally, using the very last 3D printing scraps that I had, I made a main spire for the roof just to give it that little extra bit of gothic flair. If your building has a spire like this, I don't know what to tell you, it's definitely haunted.
Okay, I've been working on this literally all day today, all day yesterday. I think I am finally almost at a point where the construction is almost finished. We're getting there. But I'm really happy with how it's coming out so far. It's so cute. The amount of like little things I'm also doing in order to like put lights in it. I've really been adding little bits that like come off like this. That way I can, you know, easily just flip my lights on and replace the part. Everything fits together nicely. I think almost all the windows are gonna have some kind of like lighting effect to them. So that's a lot of fun. Speaking of lighting, I also have two of these little guys that I'm gonna put on the porch. I didn't have the right batteries. I ordered some. But I also got tiny chairs from the Dollar Tree. There's only so much stuff I'm gonna make myself. Finally, spoilers for later, I got some meow meows. Gotta have some meow meows to sit on the porch of a witchy cottage. Anyways, there's not that much left to do on the construction. Fingers crossed. I'm saying that and I could just be lying to myself, but basically I need to install my wheel here. I need to put down a layer of like earth around the base of everything. And then I also have this. I don't know exactly what I want to do with. This is a little witchy lantern that I just thrifted the other night because I thought it might be fun, might save me a little time. Maybe I'll use this as the tower and do something like that. I don't know. For now, I am just gonna keep going and start working on the earth and see like kind of where everything else falls. Finally, last step, put some foam clay on this, blend everything together. So the foam clay on my house is now dried overnight and it's looking real nice and goopy, which means now I'm ready to add a little bit of detail to all of the foam bits with my wood burning tool and my Dremel. Can I just say I'm so happy with how this is coming out. I think it's so cute. It's too big. I don't know where I'm gonna put it. It definitely would have been easier to just assemble a dollhouse kit, but I wouldn't have gotten this result. So despite the extra effort and my too much gene coming out and just taking over this entire week, I'm okay with it. So now, like I said, I'm gonna take my wood burning tool and go in mostly to all the little rocks and add a bunch of just like random detail and scuffs because they're looking a little bit too uniform right now. I really want them to look like rocks and have a lot of gravelly texture to them. And then there's a couple of areas on the house as well where it's just a flat sheet of foam, so I'm gonna add a couple of details there, just some like rock wall, some bricks, maybe some wood paneling. I'm kind of just gonna randomize it and go over it where I see fit. And once I get all of that done, I can move on to sealing and painting, which I am very excited for. Even though that's also probably gonna take my entire life. All right, now I gotta mask off all these windows so that I can get painting.
Before masking and painting, I also hit the entire thing with a generous layer of Mod Podge to seal everything and help the cardboard accept paint better. Once that layer of frosting was dry, I hit the entire thing with a dark brown spray paint, which made it look like a chocolate sculpture, very on theme for the chocolate coma I'll be entering later this evening.
So this is a complete side note, but some of you guys might have noticed that Toast was not in my previous video. And that's because he hasn't been around as much, but he showed up today and he's got a little collar on, which means hopefully he has been adopted by someone in the neighborhood. But he's still here just for visits because he knows that I will feed him and he's greedy. So I hope that this is a collar of ownership. Still not neutered, but I hope that this means someone is now permanently taking care of him. Maybe they'll neuter him too, because that would be good. But like, look, he's got a little collar on now. Yeah, sweet boy. So now that I've got a pretty decent base coat going on here, I think for the rest of it, I'm going to stick mostly to hand painting just so that I can really capture all the little details. I think some of these nooks and crannies are gonna be a little too hard to get into with my airbrush. Also, check it out. I've got it on a swivel. Hell yeah. Hopefully that'll make this a little bit easier. Anyways, I am very excited about this stage of the process. Y'all know I love detail. I love getting all the age and the tones in there. Like an old cottage, probably haunted, I think is gonna be a lot of fun to try to bring to life and put a lot of character into. So I'm probably going to stick pretty close to the original sketch that I did at the beginning of this video, but I'm also just gonna follow my whims. I also am a little intimidated because I know this is gonna take forever. This has consumed my entire life this week anyways, so let's get started. And this is what my little house is looking like after the first session of painting. I think it's really coming together. I'm very pleased with the color scheme and the paint job, but I am gonna put just a little bit more depth into it. I think it looks really cool, but it doesn't quite look spooky enough yet. So I'm gonna do a little bit more work on the paint job to actually get it into spooky territory. But of course, the biggest thing that's going to get it into spooky territory is actually adding the decorations, some cobwebs, some pumpkins, some skeletons, and spooky fodder that usually comes with a haunted house. So I'm gonna do a little bit more work on the paint job and then get into decorating, which I'm very excited for.
Giving my house a final wash to dirty it up, and I did the same with the chairs that I purchased from the Dollar Tree. I also mucked up my porch lights and installed them with a couple of batteries so I can easily access the switch. And then it was time to fully dive into all of the details. I started by making a little rug for the front porch. I cut up some decor leaves into a bunch of tiny pieces so that I can leave them all over the ground as fall foliage. And when the ground was sufficiently covered, I went about adding in a bunch of other foliage and plants. The roof also got covered with a bunch of fall foliage, and I installed a doorknob because I realized I had forgotten to do that. And of course those leaves need some trees to fall from, so I made some trees out of a bunch of twisted wire and scraps, painted them to actually look like trees, and glued on a bunch of my little cut up autumn leaves so they look like partially covered fall trees. Once those were glued into place, I still had a moat and a little mill wheel to worry about water-wise, which I was going to try and make look as realistic as possible by using UV resin. It was pretty difficult to use the UV resin to make the water on the mill wheel, so I ended up just using it for the still water in like the creek beds. And I hope you guys are proud of me because I finally got a UV curing lamp instead of using the freaking sun. I got a little bit more adventurous with the UV resin on the backside of my project, and I decided to just make the rest of my flowing water with some dripping hot glue, which is a method I've used in the past, so I know it works pretty well even though it doesn't dry as clear as UV resin. I know I've seen people do this sort of thing with UV or regular resin, but I just didn't have time to research it for this video. But I do think this method ended up looking pretty dang good in the end.
Hello, so I'm almost to the final finishing touches, but before I go and actually like decorate the house, I think the house needs some residents. I picked these up at the dollar store. They don't look too great, but I am going to make them my own. So for one of these, I want to make it into like a little pumpkin witch. I think I want to make the other one just a super simple, cute little sheet ghost. And for the final one, I think I'm just gonna leave him as a skeleton. So let's create some little guys.
With the house's inhabitants all done, it's time to add a couple of finishing touches. And with the house all decorated and ready for trick-or-treaters, it is time for the reveal. A fog machine is truly one of the best financial investments I have ever made. Anyways, I'm wearing a pumpkin head because I just planned on editing today, and I am not the most presentable at the moment. Also, sorry Toast isn't here for the outro. I tried to find him, but I guess he went home, which is good because it's cold outside, so hopefully he is toasty warm. Anyways, thoughts and feelings on the build for this week. I'm really happy with it. It's so cute, especially with all the lights on. I hadn't turned the lights on until I filmed this, and it looks even better with all the the lighting setup and the outdoor environment. I'm thrilled. The main critiques I have with it are mostly just beginner stuff. You know, this is my first miniature build of this kind, so there's, you know, things that I can improve upon in the future. The really main problem is that it's so big. I don't know where I'm gonna put it. Anyways, I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. My patrons will know I was trying to do something smaller for this video, and then I accidentally made this, so consider it a Halloween present. And I hope you guys are having a really happy and safe Halloween. Hopefully this went up actually on Halloween, because that's the plan. Have a really good day, stay safe, most importantly. Second to most importantly, eat a lot of junk food. That's what Halloween's all about. That's what I'm planning on doing. But thank you so much for watching till the end of the video. If you're having the Halloween withdrawal big sads, I have a whole playlist of Halloween videos on my channel that you can check out. And next month it's probably not gonna stop, so subscribe if you want to see more of that.
And if you enjoyed this video, please like the video, tell it it's pretty, or tell it it's scary. Get a little thematic with it. Once again, thank you so much for watching, but as always, the biggest thank you for this video and every single one of my videos goes to my patrons, and especially my executive producers.
Hesta Boom, James Doom, Ulfer Nightingale, Ty Bear, Cinderus, Speak of Thee Devil, Tiro2, Donna Shipley, Mystic, Scribble, Mushroom Sita, Ghastly, Galaxy Stardust 035, Luxbar, My Name is A, Miss Fenris, Becca, Nylud Nam, Cyrus Orion, Jenny Craftsma, I Do TKD, Ren, Band Off the Yellow, Cloud Max, Velly Smelly, Stabby Horse, Heebie Jeebies, Cardia X, Christina Kimtia Art, Fiasco, Mossy Raven, Silver, 2 Prism, I'm not saying that name on the internet, ABW Mix, Icegavan, Awendu, Liana, Ermlargene, Breeza, Phoenix, PNG Not Found, Freedom and Gus Gus, Dodo, Zyl S, Agent Sketchy, Thea Maya, Lovisa, Eloquent Silence, Sushi McNushi, Hypno, Sweet Winter Garden, Gravity Drop, I Hang Out with Cats at Parties, and Bean the Bread.